So you guys asked me to talk about Jesse Ridgway, which I don't even know who this is. They don't have a very big channel, 88,000 subscribers. They kind of made the news because they're, I guess, a family vlog, and they share a lot of personal stuff, of course. And I guess they shared that they were going to get an abortion and terminate a pregnancy that their doctors say was going to most likely be Down syndrome. So I thought let's do this. Let's watch this TMZ article, because TMZ, they did an interview with TMZ. So let's get a little bit of background from TMZ, and then we'll share our opinions, and we'll also refer to some disability advocates like Crutches and Spice to kind of have this conversation as it comes up every time a couple makes reproductive decisions because of disability. It's important. And also, just obviously, in case you guys are new to my channel, my name is Brittany. I'm disabled. And also, I'm pro-choice. So let's talk about it.
Of a long one, so this story is a bit of a long one, so you have to lock in. Influencer couple Jesse Ridgway and his wife said they made the difficult decision to terminate pregnancy after the baby was diagnosed with Down syndrome. Jesse and Ashley announced in March that they were expecting their first baby. Jesse wrote in an Instagram post in April, "We were so excited to celebrate the gender reveal in a psycho video with you guys, but in true art imitates fashion, there had to be a dark twist." He further said, quote, "The same genetic testing that told us our baby would be a boy revealed to us that he had a 95% chance to be born with Down syndrome." According to Jesse, they were rocked by this info. At the time, he explained that the couple was very grateful for the support they were receiving. He said that Down syndrome comes with a high risk of miscarriage and other health problems. So he said that even though they were very excited to become parents, they were gut-wrenched by this. This news was announced to Instagram. He wrote, "I know some of you may be very disappointed to hear this news. This has been extremely traumatic for both of us, especially Ashley. Thankfully, everything went smoothly, but emotionally, we are drained." He went on to talk about what they were feeling when they got this news. He said that he was shocked but optimistic. He said, "If they're a little slow intellectually, then we'll make it work. I signed on to be a parent, come what may. I just didn't fully understand what Down syndrome entailed." He wrote in a statement, "I didn't realize just how rough it is for the child, let alone the family. You never think you'd be in this type of situation until it happens to you, and then things change." He ended the statement off, "As for us, we made a difficult decision that we believe in the long run will be beneficial for our family. Thankfully, we had a choice. It will take a little time to move on, but we are excited to try again in the future and hopefully have a better outcome." This story is a bit of a long.
Okay, so off the bat, of course, the pro-lifers are upset. I think we should, for the sake of argument, just move them away from the conversation, because I do think pro-lifers are typically just inconsiderate and inconsistent with their argumentation. So since we do philosophy through pop culture here, and I do believe we should do as much as possible to mitigate harm, we're going to move pro-life argumentation just out of our conversation, because I just think it's not helpful. When we talk about abortion, we're talking about two things. One, we're talking about a medical reality that exists because we are biological creatures, animals on a planet that do get pregnant, and then we do have complications with those pregnancies. And abortion legally means many things. For the sake of this conversation, we'll make sure that it only means making a choice on whether or not to continue a pregnancy, versus I think in many situations, even stillbirths would be considered abortions because it's an expelling of a fetus out of the womb. So we want to make sure that we understand there's a legal perspective, a moral perspective, and then an ethical perspective at play here, which is why it's very sensitive for people. Now, why people get abortions is different from the fact that they have the legal right to get abortions, right? Terminating pregnancies and being able to do that is your legal and should be your legal right. Why you get an abortion, that is a secondary moral conversation you have to have with yourself and your partner about whether or not it's still right to get an abortion, even if you legally can. If you were a pro-lifer, and I know we said we're gonna leave their argumentation out of this, they would say something like, no matter what, you can't have an abortion. And I would say, we don't even think that's true for murder. We actually make stipulations about murder all of the time. We actually make argumentation for why murder is valid all of the time. It's interesting that pro-lifers will make an argument for why murder makes sense, or self-defense or killing somebody makes sense, but never for abortion. I do see abortion often as like a conversation around self-defense. I think in many ways it can be, especially if it's a life to the person who's pregnant. In this situation, though, the reason I think it's so sensitive for people, of course, comes from the fact that it's an implication that if the baby is disabled, or specifically Down syndrome, that the baby is less worthy, or that the baby isn't worth bringing to term because of the burden it would have on the family. And that is a very hard conversation for people. So I want to refer to Crutches and Spice to help us expand on this conversation, as she is a disability advocate. And I think that would be helpful to have someone else's voice in this conversation, because every time this type of thing happens, it always becomes a conversation. Okay, so here we go.
We're going to have a disabled child. By the way, I saw people get on the internet and says they had an abortion because they were going to have a disabled child. By the way, I saw a couple of videos from people saying that it was autism. You can't test for autism in the womb. All the previous posts were about how no child left behind. I digress. But every single time this topic is brought up, I say the exact same thing, and I've said the exact same thing for years. In fact, I actually changed my mind on one particular aspect, and that is that I never need to know. I never need to fucking know why you need to have an abortion. I don't know why you have to come to the internet and tell everybody why you had an abortion. You had an abortion because it's a fucking Tuesday. You had an abortion because you didn't want a kid. You had an abortion, blah, 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 blah. You don't ever need to fucking tell me. It is your fucking choice. And for a group of people who consistently yell about the fact that you should have bodily autonomy at every single turn, you undermine that very argument by creating these standards or these discussions whereby you create best case scenarios for abortion. The best case scenario for an abortion is because you fucking wanted one. This is all, like, to me, a lot of this is just performative contrition, because at the end of the day, I never need to know. It's your choice. Do you not want it to be your choice? It's your choice. And I know we live in an ableist society. Of course we know that we live in an ableist society. You all treat disabled people exactly the way that society reflects in a lot of cases. Even some of the good ones. No one ever needs to know. That's the thing. And also, I don't know why anybody is simultaneously shocked that Trump and RFK Jr. consistently put laws into place that essentially make the presence of disability in society women's problem. Why would people be shocked if it's a continuation of the very argument you were making?
I think there's two things I want to expand upon here. I agree, I don't need to know why you're getting an abortion. And two, I do think the risk of sharing too much with your audience, and even I run into this as well, is that the audience does feel entitled to knowing why you did something for two reasons. One, maybe the audience doesn't want to support you if you, quote, abuse your kids. And two, like, let's say they had a pro-life audience. A pro-life audience would want to know if you had an abortion, because they would stop following you if you did have an abortion. Versus maybe a disability audience, maybe an audience that's heavily disabled would not heavily disabled, but like disabled as an audience statistic, wouldn't want to follow you if you specifically only aborted disabled babies, and then it becomes a whole conversation. There's this conversation when we talk about, I think it's Sweden, but correct me if I'm wrong, guys, where there's like basically no Down syndrome. And there's this conversation about whether that should be celebrated or not. And again, I think this conversation always goes back down to, we don't live in a safe world where we can have real conversations about the struggle of existence, because we live in a world where bad people use any excuse to hurt you, you know? And so the dilemma here is like, how do we have a safe conversation in a world where we talk about that existing within itself just like isn't worth it, and also that doesn't entitle you to killing me? Because sometimes when I get on the internet and I say like, yeah, like I'm ready to die if that happens, it's not a call to action to invite you to murder me. Yeah. If I say to somebody that like, had my mother aborted me, I wouldn't have been upset, that doesn't mean that I want you to end my life, right? Like, I think we live in a world that's very, very dangerous. And so when we have conversations about, should we abort disabled babies, we can't have a real conversation about what we're really asking, because the eugenicists and all the fucking weirdos, all the ableist people will be like, yeah, disabled people don't deserve to exist. And that's like not what we're saying. And I think this goes back to this idea that like, we're not ready to have real conversations about what an abortion is or what terminating a pregnancy actually means. And we're also not willing to have the conversation about how we all engage in like so many levels of violence. And so again, like, nobody gets to decide, nobody should decide, nobody is better because you're not disabled or disabled. Like, you being not disabled doesn't make you a better person. I also, you know, sometimes I'll say on stream, I said it the other day, that for me, I'm not willing to live a life where I'm just surviving. That is not an option for Brittany. One of the reasons I was so suicidal my whole life as a queer person, and then later as a realized autistic person, is like, it's not good enough. Life is not good enough to just survive in. So for me, I had to create meaning in my life. I had to have philosophical meaning in this meaningless existence to realize like, oh, I am an animal on a planet, and I'm simply here because of evolution, and like, oh, that's kind of interesting now. And that kind of changes my perspective, and that allows me to like keep going and live a very liberated life. With that said, I think sometimes this is why parents are afraid of having kids, because they know how hard life is. And I think parents kind of secretly know that they're already forcing a child into existence that has to deal with this Trump administration and racism and oppression and taxes and struggle. And they just think, yeah, it would be a lot harder if my kid was disabled. Like, when those parents die, systems are not in place to protect those kids, and disabled children will end up unhoused. And that's why we have to advocate for structural changes, because I do think parents would probably be more likely to have disabled children if they thought their kids would be safe. And so I think there's another role in this that is the system versus the individual. I do think most parents who are aborting their possibly disabled fetuses are doing it because they're terrified of what those kids will go through. And also, there's also conversation about a fetus or a baby. So like, is it a baby yet or isn't it? If I abort my fetus, is it a baby all of a sudden because it's disabled, or is it not a baby? Because it's interesting when we start talking about disabled fetuses, all of a sudden they're babies again. It's like, so are they babies or not babies? It's like, they're both. They're a clump of cells that transform into and become what we know as a baby. And that clump of cell becomes like a really, a person, right? And so it is layered. And so again, legally, you have the right to have an abortion, period, the end. Morally and ethically, this is dependent on so many factors and so many unique factors that society can't make this decision for you. You have to make it for your family. Okay, you have to. Now, just a few examples of some TikToks that were kind of go around, videos of Jesse and sort of his reactions. Then we'll watch an interview. So this was posted on TMZ from a YouTube video from Jesse.
He's actually going to end it just so I can just say goodbye real quick. Yeah, of course I'm glad my dad didn't terminate me. But I'm normal. So
he said, of course, I'm glad my dad didn't terminate me, but I'm normal. So then that plays into ableism. Now, I don't know if he's just upset because he got a lot of death threats and he was feeling really bullied by the internet. They're a small YouTube channel that I don't know if they've ever gone viral or had to deal with any sort of hate campaign. And I don't know if he was just stressed in this moment, or if he's actually expressing like deeply ableist thoughts. It's probably a little bit of both, to be honest. Like, unless he's actively deconstructed ableism, he will engage in it, right? So that was hurtful for people to hear, and I think there's a reason to feel hurt by that. Here's the wife.
What is all that?
Somebody dropped all this off for you.
What is it all? I see cookies. Oh my god, that's expensive. Cookies.
She's in recovery, obviously.
Was this your parents?
Like, they're taking it hard. I think people forget abortion is still hard. And then on top of this thing that you did, you've got thousands of comments telling you to kill yourself or that you're a bad mom because you killed your baby. Like, just remember, there are so many layers to this. There is no doubt that this woman has already gone through a physical transformation, has already had to make a hard decision. And then I guarantee you that a bunch of pro-lifers are in her comment saying the most horrible things to them. So, they're really, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot going on here.
Another bird. Oh, that's really sweet.
Just,
Rest and relax.
Rest and
Love, Mom and
relax.
Dad.
Oh.
I'm interested in these cookies.
Yeah, you haven't really eaten much.
No, but my appetite's coming back.
Because, abortion is hard on the body depending on how it's done and when it's done. So people have to remember that, right?
Oils, snuggable, huggable, and lovable.
Like, I think this is a nice gesture that the people in her life are giving her care and support. I think that's really important, okay? That doesn't then justify pro-lifers in saying that if abortion is hard, you shouldn't have abortions. That's not the argument I'm making. I'm saying both can be true. Abortion can be the legal and ethical thing to do, and it can be hard, and you might need support through it, okay? Let's go to this TMZ interview with the couple themselves, and let's get a vibe for them.
Sometimes when you record your lives in real time this way, it can take unexpected turns that can really be emotionally gut-wrenching. And I'm just wondering how you feel about the fact that you now have this all recorded, you've posted it, and it lives with you. I'm wondering what your reaction is about all that.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. I've been doing content for 20 years now. For the first half, it was a lot of fictional stuff like series and whatnot. There is an not unexpected, but just a harsh turn in being so vulnerable on camera and sharing it. You open yourself up to scrutiny. And with this topic, we really wanted to let people in on our excitement to be first-time parents. And we're met with the news, and we felt we still needed to be transparent with our audience. And then
that's the problem, is like they already shared that they were pregnant. And if you know this about family announcements, this is why people don't tell people they're pregnant until 3, 4, 5 months. Because you get excited, you tell everybody you're pregnant, and then you have a miscarry, or you have to have an abortion, or something happens, and then you're dealt with another layer. So honestly, I really respect so many people who keep their pregnancy private for months until things go correctly. So they already shared, and now the audience is going to say, are you pregnant? Where's the baby? And then they're going to have to tell their audience. So this is why I caution everybody, even non-social media people, you can be private about your pregnancies. I'm not going to have a biological child, but if my partner and I had gotten pregnant, we probably would have waited some time before telling people, just to, have it between ourselves for a while. But I understand people are excited. They want to share right away. But yeah. In other words, you're not a bad person either way, guys. Okay? You're not a bad person either way. If you want to announce it right away, more power to you. If you want to keep it private, more power to you.
Of its own outside of our bubble.
And I feel like sharing what we have, thus far is something I will never regret. I don't regret, sharing our truth and our journey to starting a family.
I will say it was really difficult to watch both of you just break down for several minutes as you read the test results. Did you ever think about, you could be transparent in telling your audience, your followers, what the test results were without showing them you actually opening the test results? That was the part that just felt, honestly, I felt like it was invasive. Like I shouldn't be watching this.
Hold on. I believe that's this video.
It is a dark, dreary day, guys.
It's over. Look.
Everything looked healthy.
They said
Let's see.
NT looked normal, was within normal range. So we were pretty happy about that. We did the amniocentesis just a couple days ago, and it was pretty extreme. They did injections into her stomach area. They stuck a big needle right into one side, and the baby actually rolled over into the needle. It was terrifying. They then had to do a whole nother injection.
It was painful.
But thank you guys for all the support, and yes. I think we could be about to find out right now.
I know, I'm already crying, and I don't know why.
When they did the amnio, they do it ultrasound guided. It's now a month later from our other ultrasound. This ultrasound, everything looked normal. Everything looked healthy.
They said everything looked normal. That's just not us just saying it.
Yes.
They said everything looked normal.
I'm going to forward it a little bit.
I guess this is where we're doing it. Yeah. Right? I mean, I don't know.
No matter what happens, it'll be okay. We'll get through it. I know it'll be hard if it's bad.
I know, I just hope this nightmare's over.
Here we go. We're going to see the result. I have to download the official report. Abnormal insight result. Consistent with trisomy 21. No.
What is it? Wait. Where are you seeing this?
No.
Let me see. I can't see it.
It says abnormal insight result. Blah, 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 showed 3.
I can't believe their doctor's not calling them to tell them. I can't believe they have to figure it out on their own instead of their doctor explaining it to them.
Chromosome 21 signals consistent with trisomy 21 Down syndrome. Genetic counseling is recommended. Pattern consistent with trisomy 21. Hey.
Ooh, okay. So very intimate, very, okay.
Pain that this couple is going through like this.
We grappled with that.
We did, but if, this is such a common thing that happens, and I feel like if you were a fly on the wall with anybody receiving any type of news like this, that we reacted the same as everyone else. We just decided to share it.
We really thought it was going to be good, so that's why we were filming it. But then after it turned the way it did, I because I have to upload everything, I throw it in the editor, and I'm just like, is this going to be a net positive or net negative? And I feel uncomfortable. She's bawling, we're emotional. It's so vulnerable. And then I thought that people aren't showing this ever because it's so hard and you open yourself up to the bad. But I feel like the world is almost lacking in that vulnerability with the death threats and everything. It has been shocking. Close people to us, very judgmental, religious based, saying we're gonna burn in hell.
Ooh.
You know, we deserve to die. You know,
I don't deserve to be a mother because of, you know, the decision that we just made.
Yeah, we had a gate installed. I have a gun next to my nightstand because it's been getting so ridiculous. And they're becoming to emails, DMs, you name it. It's been, we've seen the darkest side of humanity through this process.
Hopefully you get pregnant again and everything works out. Are you going to be as transparent this time around as you were last?
I don't know. I'm still like living in this, obviously. So it's definitely something that we'll think about moving forward, but I never not want to be transparent.
Yeah, just how hateful it's become has definitely caused a bit of a shift in our vulnerability, but we want to keep pushing forward and remember, that it is helping people. And, for better or worse, the conversation that's being had online is one of the most important topics. Everyone wants, is part of a family, potentially wants to start one. And this is something that, we're two perfectly normal people. We'd never imagined confronting having a child with Down syndrome, and you don't think it'll happen to you, and then it does, and you like to think you know what you do in that situation, just given the information that you know. But there was so much that we were unaware of, and how hard it was.
And I really want to be here to advocate for all the women in my DMs, and I feel for them, and I see them, and we all relate to each other, and I just want to be that voice for them to say, like, it's scary out there, but like the more that we put ourselves out there and say that this is a normal thing that we could talk about, and I just want to help them in any way that I can.
Yeah, I think last time I checked, it's like 30% of women in the US have an abortion because of Down syndrome, but don't tell people because of the shame. So part of me is very amazed that he shared, and that they shared as a couple, and that she was willing to be vulnerable and share with us. And I also think that the dilemma again goes back down to why we do anything that we do. But I think this is the problem. This is why I say the world doesn't deserve our vulnerability, but this is also why I think the world won't change, because the world doesn't understand how layered and complicated all of these vulnerable things are. And we show disgust at people. And I understand your disgust response. And at the same time, we have to have people in our lives that are like, okay, you had an abortion. Now what? Okay, you're afraid to have a disabled kid. Now what? Okay, you have a fear of this thing. Now what? It's like, real things are happening. And so again, I commend them for sharing, and I also recommend that maybe the internet doesn't deserve this intimacy from you. And at the same time, if we don't talk about these things, we will live in shame. Women are living in shame every day for the fact that they had an abortion. And I don't think that should be the case. But then often shame occurs in communities that stay silent. So then we're asking people to stop being silent about their choices, right? But then we're like, oh, take this off the internet, like it's too private. But then we're like, why don't people ever, it's a double-edged sword. If we share it and bring attention to it, it's like we're the bad guy. If we keep it private and don't tell anybody, we're the bad guy, And so again, I think I can hold space for both people. I think I can hold space for everybody here. And I would also say that these are important conversations to have about having a baby. My partner and I talk about this all the time. Like, one of the things that I think you should talk about too with your partner is, what if I die in childbirth? Are you okay being a single parent? What if I die and the child is alive? Are you okay being a left? Because a lot of people are only interested in being parents as long as you're present. Most people want to have a baby because their partner wants to have a baby. Are you ready to be a single parent on the day I give birth? And if the answer is no, then we won't have a baby. And that doesn't mean we have to not be together. It just means that, like, okay, like this is either a compromise or not, or something that wasn't a priority or not, or, we had so many conversations before we decided not to have biological children. And we ran through a lot of scenarios, including that one. We ran through a lot of scenarios in general, because again, like he said, you think it's not going to happen to you, but it could. It could happen to you. You could die trying to have a baby. It happens to people. And so the question is, what are you going to do if it's you? Even if you theoretically, even if statistically, not theoretically, even if statistically it's not going to be you, what if it's somebody you know, right? Like the fact that religious people in his community are saying horrible things about him is such a good example. Even Chap pointed it out. Pro-lifers like sending death threats is so ironic, right? So I commend them for their vulnerability, and I also would respect them for never sharing again on the internet. But this is also why people, at the beginning of stream, I was trying to be very transparent with my own life. To be honest, at some point, there might come a point where I say it's none of your business and you can either trust me or not trust me. But look at the internet. Look at what an evil fucking place it is that, you can never do anything correctly. Like this couple sharing something so vulnerable and them getting death threats, right? And so we have to have these conversations. I also think if people knew how hard pregnancy was on people, that we would probably have major, like way less pregnancies. I also think that's why you're seeing a lot less pregnancies too, is once people realize you could lose your teeth, your hair can completely fall out, you can literally, have your insides on the outside, you could die. Right? Yes, Chet says if you're a Black woman, pregnancy is terrifying because of misogynistic, racist medical systems. I mean, we've seen this time and time again. It is no joke to have a baby. And so again, just the casualty in which we not only bring people into existence, but the way we judge people, So, what do you guys think? Any thoughts? Chet said, thank you for helping me parse through this, Brit. And chat, I didn't react when I first heard it, but I didn't have immediate thoughts, but I knew I wanted to work through it. Yeah, it's such an important thing to work through too. With Adriana Smith, right? She was a pregnant woman, went in, had a medical emergency. The doctors didn't take her seriously, sent her home. She ends up becoming unconscious. They put her on a machine to basically bring Chance into existence, her child. And, everyone just moved past Adriana Smith's story so quickly, right? They literally, you know what I mean? It was such a big deal and barely anybody paid attention to it. In my mind, it did not go viral enough at all. And so I think a big part of it is they refused to use her name a lot of the time. In the titles, it was always like pregnant woman, incubator. It was never Adriana Smith. Like, so horrible. Yeah, and Chet says she was a nurse. She was literally a nurse, Chet says very genuinely asking what people's thoughts are on terminating pregnancy with a high chance of Down syndrome. I deeply feel abortion is compassionate here. I think the why always matters. I think the question is why you would abort a baby who is disabled. Because again, it's so layered. I think this should be a bigger question, though. My partner and I had this same conversation, and I think what we came to a consensus on was not that the baby is disabled. We found that to be the wrong question. I found that the better question was to ask, well, what if the baby was born into the world, period, and the possibility of the damage of that world, even if they were able-bodied? Because we often think about the world only being hard for disabled people, but the world is also very hard for able-bodied people. It's very hard to be a person in the world. And so for us, we thought the better question was, is it ethical to bring a baby into existence, and then to ask the following question. So that answer was actually circumstantial. We came to the conclusion that having a baby wasn't inherently good or bad, but was very context-based. So then we would add the context to the situation. The baby was born into poverty. My income. The baby was born into my income. I lose my job. We don't own a home. We have no family structure or community. Like one of the reasons why, there were so many reasons we decided not to have a baby. One of which was powerfully that we didn't want to do that in this lifetime. But I think more than that, I just kept thinking about the school system and the children and where would my kid go to school and what country would we raise them in and who would be their active grandparents and who would we want to babysit our kids, and do we love our parents, but do we love them enough and trust them enough to babysit our kid, and what does that look like, and how do we feel about that? There were so many questions we had to ask ourselves. Now, we're in a privileged position, which means we had the choice about pregnancy, right? We're on birth control. This is different when you have an unprepared pregnancy. That's okay. We were in a privileged position to prepare for pregnancy. I got on birth control before I even met my partner. So when I knew they were coming to meet me, when we were courting, I got on birth control right away. We did STI panels, we did all of our due diligence, and then we started having sex. So we did not even have sex without birth control in place. And the birth control responsibility fell on me because I'm the one who can get pregnant. So even though I know a lot of people, because separate from my partner existing, I will never allow you inside of my body unless it is, I have done my due diligence to protect my body, you know, and I haven't always done that. Okay. And so again, when we have these conversations, I know for a fact that the responsibility has to fall on me only because I'm the one who will bear all of the statistical responsibility of this child. That statistically, a man will leave. Statistically, they will not be present. They will not pay child support. And so it falls on me, whether that's fair or not. That is the truth of the circumstance, that statistically it will fall on me. And so I will do my due diligence by my child, because that's really the best thing I can do as a mother, is to protect my child in the circumstance in which they're born into the world, from that position I was in, which I acknowledge was privileged because I was educated about sex and birth control. Okay. And then eventually we decided not to have children, and we're in the process of getting sterilized. You know, we're just working on the paperwork. You know how I feel about paperwork, but I'm on birth control. Okay. So when we have these conversations, I think it's just as valid to have a baby that's disabled as it is to abort a child that you don't think you can offer a stable life to. I would just ask you to ask yourself, though, if I can't provide for a disabled child, what makes me think I can provide for an able-bodied one? Because that able-bodied child could become disabled tomorrow. They could be in a sports group and get hit. They could be on a skateboard and fall down. They could be in a car accident. You know what I'm saying? Like, we think to ourselves, if we have a able-bodied child, they will stay able-bodied. But that's not true. Any of us could be disabled. I mean, I became disabled at 30. How old, guys, was I? 33? 34? 33? 32? I became disabled in my 30s. I wasn't disabled my whole life as far as I knew. And my disability came twofold, right? Late diagnosed autistic. Autistic people get late diagnosed often because disability shows up later in life, because we've been masking and coping so hard with our life. And that's what happened to me. And I got fibromyalgia from COVID. So, you know, we have to remember that no matter the child you bring into the world, that child's circumstance is contextual based, and you just never know what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, you just never know. And so I'm not going to fault any parent for bringing any baby into the world, and I'm not going to fault any parent for having an abortion. Only they can truly know if they're doing it for malicious reasons or if they're doing it for good reasons. And I think most people are probably doing both for relatively neutral or good reasons, both having a baby and terminating that pregnancy, you know? Okay, so I'm just not going to judge these people in that way. Let me see. Chat says, exactly, disability is a spectrum. Even within a certain disability, having a child, period, is a risk for having a child with disability. And I think that's not discussed more. Absolutely. Chat said many kids in Gaza were once able-bodied. Absolutely. Chat says, I trained at a facility for adults with developmental disabilities. I've seen what happens when disabled babies grow up and their family can't or won't care for them. It can be pretty sad. Absolutely. Absolutely. We also saw, that's also true of elderly people that end up being put in senior citizen home too. Like, there's a devastation there. And I think there needs to be work done by parents and children to be the kind of parents that your children would want to take care of, and to raise kids that would want to care for family. But it's a relationship. We have to be in relationship to these things. And that's why I educate people on birth control. It's why I want to educate people on doing their due diligence, to saying, hey, wait a second before you make a lot of these decisions. Just just pause and do your due diligence. I mean, look at these YouTubers getting multiple girls pregnant because they think they're shooting blanks. And I'm sitting here like, you are too damn old not to be using birth control. Like, at some point, we have to acknowledge that the world is a reflection of us as a whole. And too many people, I think 40% of pregnancies are unplanned. Come on, girls. They're not all teen pregnancies out here, okay? Too many of you are too damn old to be getting people pregnant. Okay, so we also have to hold ourselves responsible. And I know the system takes away sex education. I know conservatives in the US are always trying to take away sex education from kids, but what about the adults? Are you doing your due diligence to go out of your way to understand how your body works and to get the birth control you can take or is needed? Use a condom, do whatever you need to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, we also need to be responsible because there's a baby involved or a life involved or sex could be a life and death decision. Okay? Having a baby is a life and death decision. I need you to take it like a little bit more seriously. Yeah? Okay. Let's see. Scrolling up from chat. Chat says, oh my gosh, I'm having a bubble pop with that perspective. Love that. Okay. Chat says, honestly, personal responsibility and agency is the same reason my partner got a vasectomy. And honestly, that's hot to me. Amen. 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 You know? Chat says you can get sterilized legally. I don't even understand that question. Yes. What do you mean? Like, getting your tubes tied and everything? Or getting a vasectomy? Yes. Legally? Yes. Wait, Chesa, do you know that Canada banned forced sterilization yesterday? I mean, that's also another part of this conversation on this, you know, because First Nations, I believe, in Canada is what they're called, had forced sterilization put on them by Canadians, which is disgusting, right? So on the same front of wanting advocacy for choice, that also involves not forced sterilization, right? Because how disgusting is that to force a population into being sterilized because you're racist and all these horrible things, right? So we don't do that either. And that includes on people with disabilities, right? We don't want to force sterilization on disabled people, on anyone that we deem unsuitable for parenthood. And that includes, and I know this is a very hot take, criminals. You cannot say that criminals need to be forced sterilized. Guys, we're even in this position right now where we're talking about forced sterilization because none of you all will do the work. Let's do the work so we don't have to force sterilize people, and we shouldn't even be talking about it in the first place. The same way we shouldn't even be talking about death penalty. What are we talking about taking people's lives for? We should live in a world, will never happen because, you know, but we shouldn't live in a world where we're talking about killing people. You know what I mean? Like, what are we talking about here? And it all stems from this idea that you think you were born better than other people. You are not born better because you are not disabled. Your life is not more meaningful because you are not disabled. Your life is not more meaningful because you are white. Your life is not more meaningful because you are a man. Okay? It's just not. And so we have to deconstruct this. That's why I say white supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy. All of these things are connected to this idea of having perfect children and perfect bloodlines with perfect skin and perfect wealth and perfect. And I'm just, okay, no. We got to deconstruct all of this. All life is valuable. All life is sacred. And we have to contend with the reality that we exist as biological creatures on the planet, and we do engage in levels of violence that we should be mitigating, right? Chat said criminals should be forced is a talking point. Oh, absolutely. Specifically forced castration on sex offenders, felons, people who will never be, because, you know, pregnancy happens in prison. You know, there is pregnancy that happens in prison. I mean, people are raped in prison, right? There's always groups advocating for forced sterilization of inmates, be them male or female, because there is pregnancy that happens in prisons, and they don't want these criminals to get out and, quote, go impregnate other people. But yeah, that's a conversation that happens a lot. Again, like, we are very dehumanizing as a species. And I'm just saying we got to do better. But I think this was a reflection of that. So my heart goes out to this family. My heart goes out to disabled communities that are listening to them talk about aborting this Down syndrome baby. My heart goes out to the Down syndrome community. And I just want to remind people that being a person is really hard, and being a good person is even harder. That's my opinion on this topic.